You're listening to the Fibromyalgia Podcast, Episode 9. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse, and today we are talking about my favorite subject. We are going to be talking about the things that you can do to feel better in your own body. We are talking about self-care. Now, in episode 2, I did talk a lot about this, actually. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, it's all about how your body isn't actually the enemy. And we talked a lot about what the relationship that we have with our bodies. We talk about the way that we are abusing our bodies, both with what we do and what we say in our own heads that other people might not even be hearing. But today I want to talk a little bit more in depth for what self-care is, what I mean when I say self-care, and the ways that self-care is impacting your life and the people around you. So just to recap, for those of you who haven't listened to episode 2, this really came home to me not too long after I got married. I did like many of us girls do, and I was putting down myself and I was putting down my body, and my husband just stopped me in my tracks. And he said, "You are beautiful. I love you. And every time you say stuff like that, you're actually putting me down because I chose you." And wow, right? So that really stopped me in my tracks. And I started at that point to begin to see myself the way somebody who loves me sees me. And yes, you guys, I get messages like this all the time. I know how lucky I am. But I want you to start treating yourselves that way. So just to define the terms, self-care, self meaning, of course, ourselves, you meaning you, and care, which means a couple of different things, right? Care means love, right? Like to say, I care for you, I love you. Care can mean an emotion. Care also means taking care of something, like you might care for your clothes. You might don't necessarily feel an emotion towards them. You're actually doing things to help maintain them, help them be at their best. That's all self-care actually is you loving yourself and you doing the tasks that need to be done to take care of yourself, like to tend to yourself, your body's needs. So for a super simple way of saying it, I'm saying that self-care means self-love, not just in the emotion that we feel, but treating ourselves the way that we would treat someone that we care about, or treating ourselves the way that we would treat someone who we are responsible for taking care of, right? So if you have a child, or if have a friend, someone that you need to take care of, a pet. For many people, if you've not had a good family background, adopting a pet is a great way to learn this lesson, because you have to take care of them. They are dependent upon you. You've got to feed them. You've got to take them to the doctor. You've got to make sure, I've always had cats. You got to make sure that their claws don't grow into their paws, and make sure that their claws stay trimmed, and so many other things. And we need to do the exact same thing for ourselves, for our bodies. Now, a lot of people really, really struggle with self-care. And most of the coaches that I know teach self-care in some way, shape, or form. And we always kind of joke around as coaches, like that's the thing that we want to teach the most is self-care. It's usually because it's the lesson that made the biggest impact on our lives. And that is absolutely true for me. If you put a gun to my head and said, tell me the one thing that turned your life around with fibromyalgia, what was the one thing that helped you get better, and you can only choose one, the one thing I would tell you is learning how to take care of myself, learning how to listen to my body, learning how to give my body the tools and the materials that she needs so that she can heal. This is the number one thing that will make the biggest difference in how you feel. It is also the hardest part of the job. Taking care of yourself when you don't feel good, or when you're frustrated with the body that you live in, when you have a body that doesn't do the things that you want it to do, can be so, so challenging. And so I'm going to hopefully encourage you in some ways today, give you maybe some different ways of thinking about it, and give you a few other consequences of not taking care of yourself that maybe you haven't thought of, that might help shift this around for you. And as always, just to put it back out there again, I know I say this every episode, but I just want to remind you, the full transcript and show notes for this, anything that I mention, any resources that I mention, are all going to be available at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. So as you're listening to this, don't worry about that. Just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/9, because this is the 9th episode, and you'll be able to get all of that information. So let's go talk a little bit about some of the benefits of self-care that maybe you haven't thought of. So self-care, loving yourself, tending to yourself, of course, means that we are going to be healthier. A caring environment is always healthier than a bullying environment, which is actually what most of us are providing. And again, I talk about this a lot in episode 2. So if you're not sure what I mean by that, just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com/2 and you'll see episode 2. You just can't heal if you are always berating yourself or pushing yourself to your breaking point. There was a study that asked law students some questions, then injected them with material that causes an immune response. And the greater their optimism on those questions, the better their immune response. So they would ask them questions like, how well do you think you're going to do on the next exam? Or how do you think it will be for you after you graduate? The more optimistic their answers were, the better their immune response. So if you are someone who has an autoimmune condition, if you're somebody who gets sick all the time, or you have trouble healing, you get sick at the drop of a hat, every cold or every flu that goes through, you always get sick, your immune system is not where it should be. And I would be looking at how you think as part of the factors to that. The other thing that is super important about self-care is that we teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. I'm going to say that again because this is so, so important. We teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. If you have people who don't respect your boundaries, look and see if you are respecting your own boundaries. If you have people who are pushing you to do things that you're saying you don't want to do, let's say you're on a diet and you're telling them that you want to eat healthy and somebody's pushing chocolate cake at you, I would take a look and see how well you are doing at keeping your own boundaries around eating healthy, or do you sneak chocolate cake, right? I'll give you an example from my own life. There have been many, many times that I have told my husband, I want to be in bed by a certain time. I'm just naturally a night owl, so this is something that I, like, literally am always working on. I guarantee you, even just this last week, I was up way too late a couple of nights, and I'm always making a promise to myself, "I am going to go to bed earlier." So I tell my husband that, "I need to be in bed by 11 o'clock." Well, then next thing I know, we're sitting there, watching TV and, "Oh, just one more episode. Oh, just one more episode." And he's saying that to me. Well, he's saying that because I have shown him that while I'm saying one thing, I'm actually doing something else. So I am teaching him that even though I'm saying I want to be at 11, in bed by 11, what I'm actually doing is saying that's not really what I want to do. So we teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. The other thing that is super, super important about this, especially if you have anyone who is looking to you as a mentor, as a role model, as a parent, anyone who is modeling their behavior after yours, you are also teaching others how they should treat themselves by how you treat yourself. Again, I'll give you another story from my life. There are so many people in my life who have told me that they have learned self-care from me. One of the trips that I went on a couple of years ago, I was at a retreat with a bunch of other authors, and there were a few activities that I chose to not participate in because I knew it would push me beyond the amount of energy that I had for the day. The thing about this, which again, this is stuff that we're going to talk about in future episodes, so I'm going to keep it short right now. But for me, there is no drama around that. I do what I have to do to take care of myself. I do not feel like I'm missing out because I'm actually choosing to save my energy for something that's more important for me, right? So there's no missing out. I don't feel bad when people are doing things that I can't do. I just do what I need to do to take care of myself. A little bit later in that trip, one of my fellow authors came to me and told me that she had actually been dealing with some medical issues the whole time that we were there. And that last day, she chose to leave the retreat to go see a doctor and get that medical issue taken care of. And she did it because she watched me taking care of myself. This happens to me over and over and over again. I cannot tell you how many times I have had people tell me that I am learning how to take care of myself because I watch how you take care of yourself, right? So, number one, most important, we teach others how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. And number two, second most important, we are teaching others how they should take care of themselves by how we take care of ourselves. This is so important if you've got kiddos because they are watching you every second of every day. And if you are always the last person to sit down to dinner, if you don't take care of yourself, if you are always eating on the run, if you are always putting everybody else before yourself all the time, your kids are going to do that too because that's how they're learning how to behave. So they are going to grow up and put everybody else before themselves, even when they should be resting because maybe they got the flu, right? Like all of those kinds of things you are teaching your kids. Now, for me, and I alluded to this in the story that I told about being at that retreat, for me, saying no means I'm saying yes to something else, right? So, like I said, for me, there's no drama. It's just simply about making a choice. When you have fibromyalgia, your choices are so much more obvious that you have to make them, right? Everybody is limited to the amount of time and energy and money and brain power that they have. It's just with fibromyalgia, it's so much more obvious because the amount we have is a bit smaller. So I was just listening to another podcast, one that I follow. It's someone who doesn't have fibromyalgia. It's another coach, and she was talking about the fact that she's always having to make choices about how she uses her brain because she only has so much brain power, because that's true for every single person on this planet. I think I know that lesson better than most because with fibromyalgia, it's so much more obvious. So be aware of the choices that you're making. Don't go through life and just like automatically do stuff and then get to the end of your day, realize you have no energy and wish that you had spent it on something else. I think energy is a lot like money, where you are allotted a certain amount of it. And if you aren't conscious about how you spend it, I think every single one of us has probably gotten a tax return or a bonus or birthday money or something. And unless you are purposeful about how you spend that, you get to a certain point and you're like, where did it go? And that's how many of us are with our energy when we have fibromyalgia. And so I think we have to budget our energy just like we budget money. So be thinking about the choices that you're making and how you want to spend it, right? So for me, saying no is actually about saying yes, okay? Steve Jobs has a quote that I love. He says, "It's only by saying no that you can concentrate on the things that are really important." Have you ever found yourself so busy spending your energy? I almost said money because they're very correlated in my brain. If you have you ever found yourself spending energy on doing like busy work and things that really aren't important to you, and then you find yourself crashed out on the couch and can't do the things that are important to you? Saying no and practicing good self-care is what allows you to spend your energy, spend your brain power, spend your good days on the things that are most important to you. So let's talk a little bit about some of the barriers to self-care. I think this is a big thing that people don't talk about enough. I think a big one for most of society is guilt. We feel bad saying no. We feel bad taking time for ourselves. We feel as though we're being a bad person or a selfish person. But every single one of you listening here, even if you've never been on an airplane yourself, I know that you know what they say when they are giving their instructions before they can take off, right? They talk about, how to use the seatbelt and how to use the life vest, the life preserver vest thing. Anyway, my words. They also talk about the oxygen mask, right? Right? So what do they say? They say, put your oxygen mask on first before trying to help someone else. And the point of that, in that over dramatic way, is if the airplane is in crisis and you have to have oxygen in order to live, you can't help anybody else if you're dead, right? You've got to put your oxygen mask on so that you have oxygen so that you can stay conscious in order to be able to help somebody else. That's why they say that, right? Well, on a smaller, less dramatic level, if you don't take care of yourself with your fibromyalgia, if you don't manage your energy, if you don't keep your pain levels low, if you don't rest when you need to rest, you will not be able to take care of the people around you. You won't be able to do your job. You won't be able to take care of your kids. You won't be able to be the wife you want to be. Taking care of yourself is actually a prerequisite. It's something you have to do before you can take care of anybody else. It's why when people want to become a fibromyalgia coach, the first part of our training program is actually having them work with a coach on their own fibromyalgia so that they can start to feel better first. You can't help anybody if you are flat on your back at a 10 level of pain with no energy. You cannot help anybody. And so you've got to start making choices to put yourself first so that you will have something to offer people. So guilt is a biggie, but honestly, guys, we just got to get over it. It is selfish to not take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take anybody else, right? Now, there may be some spiritual components to this for you. Growing up in a Christian house, reading my Bible, reading about the Proverbs 31 woman that got up early and made the clothes and did the shopping and like burned the midnight oil and like did all the things, kind of sets up a little bit of an unrealistic expectation for what we can actually do as women. And that's a whole nother topic and not what this podcast is about. But I just want to point out that there may be a lot of factors to this. This may be more complicated for you to unravel. You may need help from a spiritual advisor, your priest, pastor, peer counselor, if it's all, revolving around your relationship with God and how you practice your spirituality. If there's a lot of things coming up as I talk about this, if there's a lot of things coming up in here about maybe past abuse or relationships where people didn't treat you the way my husband treated me, there may be some things that you need to talk to a trained counselor or a psychiatrist or psychotherapist about. There may be some other things going on there. You may need a counselor. You may need a spiritual advisor. A coach may be fine working with you just to help remind you that what you're doing is good and right and that you shouldn't feel guilty. Another big barrier to self-care is a lot of people just don't know how to do it, right? They're so out of touch with this new fibromyalgia body that they're living in, and they really don't know what that new body wants. They don't know what the limits are on this new fibro body. They don't know how much energy they actually have. They don't know what makes them feel better. They don't know what makes them feel worse. And in my first book, Take Back Your Life, there is a whole exercise in there about how to start discovering what your body wants, what it needs, and how to help her feel her best. So if you want to grab a free download of my book, just go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com and you will see it. You see books in the menu. Just go there and you can grab a free copy of Take Back Your Life. It's in the self-care chapter, the chapter, How Can I Help Myself? And there's a section in there that talks about the book of me and figuring out the things that make you feel better and the things that make you feel worse. This is something we actually do a lot as coaches with our clients, is really help them get more in touch with their bodies and what helps them feel better, what helps them feel worse. Another big barrier to self-care is just simply bad habits, right? There are things that maybe you are doing automatically, not even thinking about it. And practice makes habits, right? So if there's something that you've done many, many times, like maybe you sit down to watch a movie, you were hungry, you made some popcorn, you do that a few times automatically. As soon as you sit down to a movie, your brain wants popcorn, right? Even when you're not hungry, right? So practicing some new, healthier habits can kind of help squeeze out those old, less healthy habits. And the same goes with self-care. Maybe your default answer to everything is to say yes to help people. Maybe you need to practice a new default answer, which is, let me do some checking and get back to you on if I can do that, right? This is also where working with a coach is super helpful, because we are actually trained on how to see these things. We're trained on how to change habits. We're trained on how to help people develop new healthy habits and can help you see from the outside looking in. We can help give you an idea of maybe some of those unhealthy habits that you've got going on that you aren't even aware that you're doing, right? There's also a huge disconnect. I mentioned this a little bit ago, but the disconnect between our brains and our bodies. Those of us with fibromyalgia, a lot of times we check out right here at the neck and kind of ignore everything down below, which we've done basically just to survive, right? We've kind of had to tune out my body in order to survive. That tuning back in can be a challenge. And I know there's many of you who feel like there's the real you, the person that you think you are, that you used to be, and then there's your body or who you are today, right? So an example might be you used to be super active and be able to survive on coffee and 5 hours of sleep, and you just can't do that anymore. And so a lot of it is tuning back into who you are right now today, in the body that you're living in right now today, right? A lot of people also say that one of their barriers to self-care is time and money. And I just want to be blunt here. This is totally not a barrier, because self-care is not about time and it's not about money at all. Self-care, you can take care of yourself. You can tend to your body's needs and you can love yourself without spending any money or any time. So this is just a bunch of hooey, okay? So you guys know better now than to tell me that you can't take care of yourself because of time and money. Remember, self-care is not about massages. It's not about vacations at the beach, although these are things we can do in the name of self-care, but we do them because we're caring for ourselves. They are not self-care, right? So just like if you had a child or if you had a pet, um, we feed them because we love them. Feeding them is not loving them. You know, do you see what I'm saying? We do one because of how we feel. It is not how we feel, right? So it's all about your attitude towards yourself. It does not have to cost you any time, and it doesn't have to cost you any money. And I will tell you, the number one thing that I do for self-care is rubbing the belly of happiness and joy. Which is petting the cat. Okay, so my big Sam, he is I don't know, he's over 20 pounds now. He's like a 20 something pound Maine Coon, and he usually sits right here next to me. He doesn't happen to be here right now, but he usually sits right here next to me, and he loves to have his belly rubbed. And that is my number one thing that I do for self-care, is just pet the cat, rub his gorgeous belly of happiness and joy. He's like a Buddha, you know, you rub the Buddha belly. And anyway, um, so I'm going to give you a few exercises to do. And I don't mean go out and exercise. I mean, like, you know, worksheet kind of exercises, a few exercises to do to help you start your self-care. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is start what I call your joy list. I want you to think about the things that give you joy. What makes you happy? What fills up your heart and your soul so that you have something that you can offer others? What fills you up, makes you feel more whole, makes you happy, brings you joy? I want you to just start making a list of this. It could be up on your phone. Maybe you just start a notes app on your phone and you just start listing it every time you think of something that makes you happy. Belly of happiness and joy, write it down. Okay. You can write massage on there if you want to, but I want to make sure that you are also choosing things that don't cost any money or any time. The other exercise I want you to start right now is your book of you. I want you to write down your owner's manual. I want you to start making note of the things that you know to be true for you. So that could be things like, I feel my best when I sleep until at least 9 o'clock in the morning. Or it could be things like, I always get a migraine headache when I'm in a room with fluorescent lights. Or it could be, listening to calming music when I'm getting ready in the morning helps me start the day more calm. Or it could be, I'm going to give you one that one of my clients gave me, which I love. She did this little exercise and sent me a list, and all in caps, written out on her list was never, ever, ever eat Cheetos again. And I love it because, number one, you can tell she's done this before. Like, it wasn't just don't eat Cheetos, right? It was all in caps, and it was never, ever, ever eat Cheetos again. So this is why we want to write it down, because it's so easy to forget. You know, we'll eat Cheetos and then feel terrible and be like, oh, don't eat the Cheetos. And then months will pass and, you know, your husband brings some home. And so you eat a few and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. Don't eat the Cheetos, right? So write it down and make notes of what you know to be true, both what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad. I also want you to make notes of the things that may or may not be true, the things you're trying to figure out. So, for instance, maybe you want to put down, how much sleep do I really need at night? Like, I always feel like I don't have enough. So this is something I need to experiment with. Or maybe you might experiment with, if I have to lead a workshop on the weekend, do I need to take a day off during the week? There could be so many things. One of the things that I jotted down in my book of me was, no, I know what it was. My body wants a hot bath every night. That's what I wrote down, because I was just like thinking, you know, just kind of talking to my body. So, body, what is it that you would like? What do you want? What would make you feel good? And the impression I got was, I want a hot bath every night. So I wrote it down thinking, that's not happening, but okay. So I wrote down, my body wants a hot bath every night. And one of the things I experimented with was, do I really need one every night? Or do I really, like, is this just another tool I can use when I think I need a little extra self-care, when I need a little extra, when I've been doing too much and I need a little extra recovery? You know, maybe that's when I need to use a bath, which actually is exactly what I do. And if something comes up, please don't be afraid to add it. Like, trust that intuition, trust your body. That's one of the things that self-care is actually listening to your body and not discounting it. Like, pretend that your body is a person that you care about, and listen to those tiny little things, those little whispers that make you wonder, I don't know, is that real? I pay attention and then examine it, test it out, see how it works, see what happens. So remember, this is not a commitment or a list of things that you must do or that you have to do or that you should do. This is a list of things that would make your body feel better or make it feel worse, and you could totally choose to do them or not do them, right? I want you to think about your senses as you go through this. So think about touch. For instance, scratchy fabrics may really send your fibromyalgia into overdrive, and really make your skin hurt. So maybe you need to think about touch. Think about sight, the things that you see, whether it's, you know, fluorescent lights or flashing lights, or blue light in the evening actually can keep you from falling asleep. Think about sound. Think about kinds of music, soothing sounds, noises that might calm you, or noises that might stress you out. One of the things I'm super sensitive to, speaking of fluorescent lights, is that little buzzing that they make when they're starting to go out. That is like totally a headache trigger for me. So realizing that, it's like, okay, y'all need to fix that, or I need to find someplace else to be. Think about taste. Think about foods that make you feel good or foods that might make you feel bad. Think about smells. Maybe things like essential oils actually make you feel better, or maybe they're a trigger for you. Maybe scents are too much for you. Maybe they trigger your asthma. I can smell a cigarette from like 5 miles away. Even when it was like 3 days old, I'm super sensitive to cigarette smells. So, think about those kinds of things. I also want you to think about people and places. So, who do you hang around with that makes you feel better? Who feels like an energy vampire to you that just sucks all your energy out of you? And think about the people that you can handle in certain amounts. Like you might have certain friends or even family members that you can, be around for maybe an hour or two, but that you couldn't spend a whole day with. Start paying attention to those things. Think about driving. Think about restaurants. Think about chairs that you sit in. There are some coffee shops that I've been in that there's this trend right now of going kind of industrial in coffee shops. And so the chairs are hard and uncomfortable. And so I can't be there as long as someplace that has more comfortable chairs. These are the things that you need to be jotting down to help you remember when you forget. So start your list of things that are true for you and your body. Start your list, your joy list of things that make you happy. And I don't want you to edit either of these lists. I just want you to jot it down. We will talk in future episodes about what to do with all of this. But for right now, I want you to just start getting back in touch with what makes your body feel good, what makes your body feel worse, what brings joy to your spirit and makes you happy and fills you up, and start purposefully adding more of this into your life so that you are full of joy and energy and health to be able to start taking care of others, of other people. And again, if you need any help with this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or reach out to a friend or a pastor or a counselor or someone. These are very difficult things to walk through on your own, because so much of society has told us that it's selfish and it's wrong. And we need to start shifting that. We need to start learning the practice of caring for ourselves, of tending to our bodies, and building ourselves up so that we have something to offer. Okay. As always, the transcript and all the show notes are going to be out there at fibromyalgiapodcast.com/9 for episode 9. I will have links to the books that I mentioned. I'm also going to have links to the worksheets. If you're a person who likes worksheets, I have a getting to know you worksheet that will help you build that list of what makes your body feel better and what makes it feel worse, and also a joy list worksheet. Those links will be on the website, fibromyalgiapodcast.com/9. And then you'll also be able to grab copies of my books. I go into this subject so much deeper in my first book, and Take Back Your Life. And so I hope that you will grab that and stay tuned for future episodes. This topic is going to come up over and over because, like I said, learning truly to connect with my body, listen to my body, and take care of myself the way that I need to be taken care of to be at my best is probably the number one thing that has gotten me to where I am today. All right, you guys, that's it for this episode. Next episode, I am super excited for. It will be our very first Ask the Coach or Dear Tammy episode. I've gotten several emails and Facebook messages with questions. And so we'll just have to see how many I can get to on the next episode. But I am so excited to answer your questions. And those of you who send in a message, if I can't fit it into the episode, don't worry, we'll give you an answer anyway. But we will also be doing future episodes. And so we will be doing this special Ask the Coach or Dear Tammy episode every 10 episodes. So next one will be the 10th, and then one on the 20th episode, 30th episode, and so on. So there's plenty of time for you to send in more questions for future episodes. All right, you guys, thanks so much for being here. It is such an honor to me to have you listen. This is one of the first recordings I've done since we officially launched. Most of the episodes were before this launched. And so I just want to thank you all for the reviews that you've put out there, for the stars that you've put out there, and all of your subscribing to the podcast and listening in. It means so much to me, and it's what keeps me going. So I've had a lot of people. My favorite review so far is the one that said she's feeling hope again. For those of you who don't know, hope is my word. I exist in this world to encourage hope. And so anytime I hear somebody say that, it just makes my day. So thanks again to all of you. And we will see you back here for another episode of the Fibromyalgia podcast as we talk about all of your questions. Bye, guys.